We're going to review the workflow for building this women's pair of twill pants with pockets. The first thing I'm going to do is to go into the library, and I'm going to go into the fabric library, and I'm going to search for muslin. And I'm going to change my fabric in my library to one of the muslins here in the library. Then I'm going to load my DXF, and you should use the same settings as I am. I'm going to add it, auto scale. The only things checked, I'm leaving the notch ratio here, auto distribute, and optimize all curve points. And click OK. I chose not to outline all the baselines in the pattern. We will be tracing some of these to fold and to sew to, but many of them are there simply so that we have reference for top stitching. Next, I am going to add an avatar. I'm going to use the female 2.1 avatar and add this to the workspace. Next, a good habit is to arrange your pattern pieces in the 2D window. We are currently looking at half of the patterns that are necessary that will go around the avatar. We're going to make a symmetrical copy of most of the pattern pieces so that we can easily sew and create our denim pants, our twill pants. So the pattern pieces that get made symmetrical copy are everything except the waistband and the watch pocket. I'm going to make sure these pieces are selected, right click on one of them, and choose symmetric pattern with sewing, and place this on the other side. The center front of the pants is actually asymmetrical, but we're going to keep the symmetry currently to make construction easier. I'm now going to select this tool here in the 3D toolbar so that I can reset the patterns to match the 2D window. And then I'm going to select all, Control or Command A, click with my gizmo in the 3D window, and slide these pattern pieces up. I am going to deactivate all of the pieces for the pockets on both sides. I have selected them, and in either window, I'm going to right-click and say Deactivate Pattern Only. Deactivate Pattern Only. The rest of the pattern pieces we are going to arrange around our avatar using arrangement points. The front of the pants go on the knee. For the back of the pants, I am going to shift select not only the back, but the yoke, and place this on this segment point here on her upper back thigh. And I'm going to select the waistband and place that here on her lower back. To aid me in seeing how my construction comes together, I'm going to not only turn off the avatar or the arrangement points, but I'm going to hide the avatar. And now I am going to sew all the pieces together. Remember, I only have to sew half of this. So I'm going to start on the inseam. Then I'm going to go to the outseam, I'm using free sewing at the moment. I'm going to use segment sewing to sew the yoke into place. I'm going to segment sew this part of the front and also the center back of both the legs and the yoke. Now our waistband, this baseline is the center of our waistband. If I click this part of the yoke here, this tells me that this part of the yoke gets sewn to this part of the waistband. So I am going to use free sewing. Start here at the center back, and then start here at the center back on the waistband. And do the same on the other side. Starting at the center back, using the blue picking points to stop. For the front of the pants, this half of our fly will get folded over. So we need to sew from here to here. So this gets sewn to here. This part of the front of the pants is going to be sewn all the way from here all the way to here. So this gets sewn here. We can see this is where our button is going to go. This baseline here is nothing more than something that's been placed so that we can temporarily attach the center front of the waistband. I need to trace this first using my trace tool. I select the trace tool, I click the baseline. I can see here in my property editor that it says baseline. When I press return or enter on my keyboard, this becomes an internal line. I am now going to segment sew that segment to the end of the waistband. So now, when I simulate, I have the core of my pair of twill pants. The next step is we're going to start adding in the pockets. This part of the pocket, the main part of the pocket, is the first thing that we will add in. I have selected them, I'm going to activate them, and I'm going to move them down closer to the ground. I'm then going to select each pocket and use the target to place these close where they will go when they are sewn in. The pocket gets sewn in on the side. This side of the pocket gets sewn into the yoke and the side of the pants. So with free sewing, this is a 1 to multiple. Hold Shift, select the first segment, the single segment, then add it to the yoke and the side of the pants. These are symmetrical still, so it has sewn the other side. For the top of the pocket, I am going to start at this same corner, and I'm just going to sew this segment into place. I select this segment from the corner. This picks up where this sewing finished, and I'm going to put that into place there. And I have to do the other one manually because the waistband is not symmetrical. Now, on this one, I did not match up this segment point. Here it matched up to the original one which connected the front of the pants. Either way, it's fine. I can edit these sewing lines so that the one on the back and the one on the pocket come together in the middle of where they start and finish. We won't notice the difference in the sewing lengths when we drape our actual pockets. So now that these are sewn in, I'm going to simulate, and there are my outer part of my pockets. It's not looking perfect yet, but don't worry, we'll get there. Next, we're going to sew in the facing. The facing are these small parts here that go on top of this piece here. So I have to activate both of these, and I need to bring them, I'm going to bring them closer and put them on top of where they are going to go. I'm using the target to place them where I want them to go. This pattern piece is going to get sewn directly to the main pocket pattern piece. So I'm going to use my free sewing and sew this here and sew this here. And again, because they are symmetrical, both sides get sewn in. I'm going to pull them out a bit so that when I simulate, they come together nicely. We're still working on a low resolution garment, so things may appear a little bit unstable. That is okay. Next, we are going to sew the pocket facing into the main part of the pocket, as well as sewing it to the front of the pants. So what we're going to do here is I am going to use my free sewing and sew all the way around this part of the pocket and match it to these segment points. And when I finish, I am going to make sure that turned is checked under the sewing line type so that these lay nice and flat. And I should have done the same thing with these as well. As you can see, I have sewn them before moving them. You can also do that if you would like. I don't recommend simulating them until you've moved them closer and activated them. So now here, when I put these pieces into place, I can put them exactly there, or I can use my target again to get them close. It's completely up to you. But we should start to see our pocket coming together. And we can tug on these a little bit or turn off simulation and move things around if we feel like that's going to help us. You can always deactivate pattern pieces if things aren't going exactly right, and then activate them again to get them into place. So here I have two nearly complete pockets that have facings in there. Now, one thing I like to use while I'm doing construction is strengthen. Strengthen is something that can be activated in either window. I'm going to select all, right-click in either window. Here's strengthen in 3D. Here's strengthen in 2D. And when I add this, my patterns in the 3D window turn this orange papaya color. I'm going to simulate. And what this is doing is it is adding a very stiff starching to my pattern pieces. The final thing that I'm going to sew for the pocket bags here is I need to sew the top of this pocket to the front of the pants, and I also need to sew the curve here of the pocket to the front of the pants. So I'm going to take my free sewing and I'm going to start on the outside of the pocket and come up and all the way across and add the same place here, up and all the way across. And again, I'm going to do turned seams. Now, before I simulate, I'm going to select the pockets and push them under and pull out the pant leg just a little bit. Select the pockets, push them under, pull out the pant. Now when I simulate, my pockets are in place. There's a little bit of dancing going on here. That's fine. Again, we're still a low resolution garment, so things will not fully iron out until we are completely finished. There we go. Okay, so let's add in some details. First, let's add in our watch pocket here. We need to trace this baseline. With our trace tool, I'm going to double click on this shape and then press Enter Return on my keyboard. I can now sew this pocket into place. And there it is all up here. It's the last piece that we need to put in place. I'm going to right click on it and activate it. And then I'm going to right click on it and say superimpose over. That puts the piece in place because I have sewn it into place. Next, let's work on our fly here a little bit. First, this part of the waistband and this part of the pants need to be in the back. I'm going to use my Select Mesh Box tool, and I'm going to select this part of the fly and also this part of the waistband. As you can see, my mesh is green. When I have selected that area, I can click on it in the 3D window. I get my gizmo and I'm going to pull it out and simulate again. Okay? And so now these pieces are on top, which is what I want. Now, the pieces here of our fly, I'm going to take my trace tool and I'm going to select all of these internal lines by double clicking on them. This one I'm not going to worry about. I know that this one is basically there as a point of reference. And I'm going to press Enter Return on my keyboard. Okay, these now are internal lines. I can select these lines. And if I do, I want to delete this line and this line. I do not want to delete this line or this line. If I double click this line, you will see that this completely selects. I would like to keep the full line all the way down to here. To be able to remove part of a line, we need to split this line at this point. When I click the point, I want to choose the internal line, then right click and say Divide Internal Point. I can then now select this line and delete it. I can also delete these two segment points if I would like. That would make folding or sewing to much easier. So we need to fold this over at this internal line. But as we can see, just like on the other side, it is connected. So we need to split this line too, so that it doesn't fold the entire internal line. I then use my fold arrangement tool, click on this line, fold this under, not all the way so that it doesn't come through, and I'm going to check fold rendering. I am then going to free sew this part of the fly to the internal line that matches it in its shape and length. And when I simulate, then I have my fly, which is starting to look like I want it to look. I'll use this line here. I can temporarily sew these two together just so that my front of my pants looks correct, and I can remove it later when I'm ready to put in the zipper. Our pocket's still not perfect, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. The other internal lines which we need to trace are the internal lines on the bottom of the legs. We need this line here so that we can fold it under. So I'm going to select it with trace and press return, and do that for the one that's furthest up. This is going to be the segment that we sew the edge of the pant to. And I'm going to do the same thing for the front. The baselines that are left show us where we would want to put top stitching. Then we can fold under our hems. Again, with our fold arrangement tool, I click on the outer arrow and fold up. As you can see, it's folding the other side as well. Don't go so far as to have the back coming through. Immediately click fold rendering. Do the same for the back. Immediately click fold rendering. Then use segment sewing and segment sew the edge of the pants to this top internal line. When you sew these, immediately go into the property editor and remove the intensity on the 3D seam line. This will give us a nice flat surface, so we don't see that this is sewn in place. And do the same for the front and remove intensity. And so our physical construction is just about complete. I am going to use my trace tool one more time here, and I am going to create back pockets from this baseline. I do this by clicking on the trace tool and double-clicking this shape. Double-clicking with the trace tool will select the continuous baseline. I press return to turn this into an internal line. I can immediately select my transform pattern tool, right-click, and say clone as pattern with sewing. This gives me my pocket piece here. And I can right-click here and say superimpose over. The only edit I need to make is that it did sew the top as well, so I can take my edit sewing and delete that sewing. To create the other pocket, I am going to right click on the pocket here, up under clone pattern with linked editing, symmetric pattern with sewing, and there is my other pocket, and I can simulate to put them in place. Now in the 3D window, select the button tool. In the 2D window on the waistband, you will see that there is a marking to place the button. Zoom in, click on the button, click on the pattern to place the button, and you'll see that there is a little bit of our button there. We're not going to move it yet, but let's put in our buttonhole, and on the other side there is a marking for a buttonhole, and I'm going to put a buttonhole. I'm going to be on close here. I'm going to click where the crosshairs are to place the buttonhole. There's my buttonhole. And then I'm going to use the fasten tool to click the button and then the buttonhole. The button will move over the buttonhole and I will see a lock, and I can simulate so that it will attach. And let's put on our zipper. Here's how I like to do this. If you remember, we attached the two parts of the front together using this internal line. I'm going to use my edit sewing and click on that and delete that sewing and simulate. That has now pulled open. Okay? These two internal lines are important here. I am going to, in my garment rendering style, activate translucent surface. When I do that, I can see these two internal lines. There's one on this side, and there's one on this side. Okay? We are going to attach our zipper to these internal lines. Here's our zipper tool. I'm going to start at the top here, click once, come down to the bottom, click twice. Not really a double click. Click 1, 2. Then I'm going to come over here, click once, 1, 2. It'll take a moment, and then I can see here, there is my zipper. My zipper is currently selected here. I'm going to click on it, and I can see all the various properties related to this. I'm going to come down here under total width and change the total width to 0.5, and I can change the teeth width to 0.25 if I would like. Oh, that's too much. 0.15. Okay? I'm going to change the type to metal, and I'm going to simulate. Now, you might notice, I'm going to go back, I'm going to go to thick textured surface. You might notice that my zipper is upside down. If I look at textured surface, I can see that one of these sides has been flipped over. If I click on that and right click and say flip normal, there my zipper has flipped over to the correct side. And I'm going to select the hardware here and change that to metal as well. I can customize my button if I would like. Change this from a button with thread to something that it looks more like a jeans button. Not that one. This one. There we go. And I can change this to metal as well. I can even change this to a copper button. I could make it a little bit thicker if I would like. And I'm going to take my Edit Sewing tool and select the sewing that is attaching the waistband. And so I have my pair of jeans. I'm going to bring back my avatar, and I'm going to go to translucent surface again. And my jeans are a little bit low. That's okay. I'm going to select all, and I'm going to use my gizmo to pull these up a little, simulate. And finally, I'm going to go to high resolution, click OK, and click simulate.